I always imagined betrayal would be loud, a screaming match, a shattered glass, a door torn off its hinges. I was wrong. True betrayal is so quiet it steals the air from your lungs. It's the sound of your own mother's voice, trembling with practiced tears in a hushed courtroom, saying, "We only ever wanted what was best for you. Why did you fight us so hard?" It's your father's stony, silent nod of agreement. It's your sister's eyes, already tallying your defeat, calculating her share of what she thinks is left. Your own lawyer is a statue of calm. And then the judge stops reading. He peers over his glasses, not at the documents, but at you. "I read about your firm in the journal last month," he says, and the temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. But let me rewind. Let me explain how my own blood tried to dismantle my life, brick by brick. To understand the ending, you have to know the beginning wasn't in some fractured, dramatic home. That's what confuses people. Our family portrait was pristine. We were the Cartwrights of Hartford, polished, prosperous, the benchmark. My father, Robert, was a third-generation partner at a venerable law firm. He believed in precedent, in legacy, in the unassailable order of things. My mother, Eleanor, was the curator of our image, immaculate gardens, flawless holiday cards, a sorrowful smile that could manipulate a room. Then there was my older sister, Vanessa, the natural successor. She absorbed our father's world of torts and trusts like a birthright, her ambition a quiet, cold flame. And me? Lillian. I wasn't the loud rebel. I was the quiet misfit. While Vanessa debated case law at the dinner table, I was dismantling old radios, writing code on my bedroom computer, obsessed with how systems worked and how they could be broken. I tried once, at 16, to explain a security algorithm I was designing, sketching logic gates on a paper napkin. My father watched, then chuckled indulgently. "Clever puzzle, Lilybug. But the real world runs on people, not circuits." My mother patted my hand. "Maybe you'll design websites for Vanessa's firm one day." The message was clear. My world was a hobby. Theirs was the empire. The slights weren't eruptions. They were erosion. Birthday toasts that praised Vanessa's potential and my interesting little projects. Conversations that pivoted to bland safety when I entered. A constant, gentle pressure to fold myself into a pre-cut shape. My departure wasn't a blaze of glory. It was a slow, steady retreat. I married Daniel, took his name, becoming Lillian Shaw, a small, potent act of self-creation, and began building my company, Aegis Solutions, in deliberate silence. I didn't want their funding, their advice, or their skepticism. I wanted the freedom to fail on my own terms, or, as it turned out, to succeed on them. The climb was brutal. Years of living on ramen and relentless hope, of working from a studio apartment that doubled as a warehouse, of missing family gatherings I was secretly relieved to avoid. I built Aegis on integrity and ironclad contracts, on protecting small businesses from the digital threats they didn't see coming. Success, when it came, wasn't a brass band. It was the hum of a server farm, the quiet ping of a major contract signing, the growing team of brilliant people who called me boss. I learned that peace was proportional to distance. So, I became a ghost in their narrative. When my mother asked, "Are you keeping busy, dear?" I'd say, "Quite. IT stuff, you know." When Vanessa quipped, "Still playing with your cyber toys?" I'd just smile. My silence was my shield. But shields can be seen as provocations. The shift was subtle. Vanessa started sending me helpful articles about tech bubble bursts. My father began musing aloud about the liability of unregulated digital ventures. The concern was a blade in a velvet glove. Then came the dinner at their country club. Vanessa, for dessert, leaned in. "I heard a whisper you landed the Callahan Group account. That's substantial for a boutique operation." Her eyes were scanners searching for data. I shrugged. Networks talk. I changed the subject, but that night, I told Daniel the fence felt electrified. He nodded, his face grim. "They're not just curious anymore, Lil. They're appraising." 3 weeks later, the package arrived. Thick, cream-colored, legal-sized. My address printed in that impersonal, perfect font. I stood in my own hallway, my heartbeat a dull thud in my ears. Inside was a petition. Vanessa was suing me, alleging my company owed her $2.3 million from a series of undocumented loans and unpaid consulting fees dating back years. The language was dry, precise, and utterly fictional. It claimed default, insolvency, and bad faith. It was a blueprint for corporate euthanasia. I didn't scream. I sat at my kitchen island, the granite cold against my arms, and read it again. The coldest part wasn't the lie, it was the methodology. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment gambit. This was a calculated siege, drafted by lawyers, built on forgeries. It required documents, coordination, a story. It required my parents to look the other way, or worse, to hold the door open. My lawyer, Mira, listened without a single interruption. When I finished, her voice was calm water over stone. This is a poison pill, Lillian. They're not expecting to win at trial. They're expecting you to be overwhelmed, to settle, to give them a key to the door so they can save you and absorb what you've built. They're counting on the emotional hurricane to cripple your strategy. So they know it's fake, I said, the reality crystallizing. They do. And your father, being a lawyer, would know the tactical value of the move. This is a family boardroom takeover, played out in civil court. The grief was secondary. The primary emotion was a glacial, clarifying fury. They hadn't just rejected me, they sought to erase my creation and frame it as my failure. My silence had ended. Now, it was war. The following days were a blur of controlled frenzy. Mira and I became archivists of my own triumph. We assembled tax returns, audited financials, bank records showing robust health. We compiled every email, every text, the years of vague inquiries that now looked like reconnaissance. We hired a forensic document examiner. My team, when I gave them a sanitized version, rallied with a ferocity that brought a lump to my throat. Our office hummed with a protective, righteous energy. I did not contact my family. Not a word. My silence was no longer a shield, it was a weapon. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the eerie quiet of the explosion they'd triggered. I slept little, fueled by a cold brew of focus and fury. The question, why, was a luxury I couldn't afford. The only question that mattered was, how do I ensure this destroys their case and not my company? The morning of the hearing, the Hartford Superior Court felt like a mausoleum. The air was stale, the light too bright. Mira was a pillar of tailored composure beside me. Then they entered. Eleanor first, in a charcoal gray suit, a single strand of pearls, the uniform of dignified distress. Vanessa followed, her chin high, exchanging a confident glance with her attorney. Robert brought up the rear, his face the familiar mask of stern authority. Not one of them looked at me. That final, total dismissal was the last brick in a wall I would never try to scale again. Vanessa's attorney opened. He painted a picture of a floundering, mismanaged company, of a reckless sister propped up by family generosity now refusing to honor her debts. He spoke of phantom revenues and inevitable collapse. On cue, my mother produced a single, perfect tear, tracing a path down her powdered cheek. When she was called, her voice was a masterpiece of broken-hearted bewilderment. We offered her every safety net, every opportunity. We begged her to let us help structure her business, properly. She always had to do things her own way. Now look. Robert nodded, just once, a jurist affirming a verdict. That nod was the final, silent verdict on my entire life in their eyes. Mira waited. She let the narrative settle, let the judge absorb their performance. The judge, a weary-looking man named Judge Horace, reviewed the filings. The rustle of paper was the only sound. He read slowly, turning pages with deliberate care. Then he stopped. He took off his reading glasses, laid them down, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked up, his gaze sweeping past the lawyers and landing on me. "Counsel," he said, his voice gravelly. "Approach the bench, please." Both attorneys rose. Vanessa's lawyer, a man named Caldwell, strode up with a hint of swagger. Mira was deliberate, unhurried. The whispered conference began. I saw Caldwell's back stiffen. He shook his head once, sharply. Mira merely gestured to the judge's copy of our evidence. Judge Horace's expression hardened from weary to stern. They returned. Caldwell's earlier confidence was gone, replaced by a pallid tension. Myra's face was serene. Judge Horace did not put his glasses back on. He leaned forward, his hands steepled. "Mr. Caldwell, I've been reviewing the defendant's submitted evidence alongside your petition. I have some discrepancies to clarify." Vanessa shifted in her seat. "The defendant's audited financials, from a firm I respect, show 3 consecutive years of 40% growth, substantial cash reserves, and 0 long-term debt. The alleged loan dates in your petition coincide with a period where your client's own financial disclosure, required in the discovery phase, shows significant liquidity issues of her own." He let the implication hang. "Furthermore, I have here a forensic analysis of the signatures on the promissory notes you entered into evidence. The expert concludes they are highly probable simulations, not matches to Ms. Shaw's verified signatures." My father's head snapped toward Vanessa, a flash of pure, unvarnished horror in his eyes. It was the look of a man who understood the law, and understood just how deeply the cliff edge now dropped away. Mira stood. "Your Honor, if it pleases the court, we can provide a line-item rebuttal for every alleged debt. The payments do not exist. The invoices were never generated by my client's accounting system. This isn't a debt collection case. This is a deliberate attempt to inflict fatal commercial damage through fraudulent means." Vanessa shot to her feet. "Objection. This is character assassination." "She's twisting." "Sit down, Ms. Cartwright," Judge Horace said, his voice like a slamming gavel. The room froze. He looked from Vanessa to my ashen parents and finally to me. His gaze held a weariness that seemed to span his entire career. "What concerns this court," he said slowly, measuring each word, "is not a family dispute. It is the officers of this court. I have before me what appears to be a fabricated financial instrument submitted under penalty of perjury in an attempt to trigger an involuntary bankruptcy for a thriving company I personally read about as an industry disruptor to watch. Someone is not just lying to this court. Someone is attempting to use this court as a weapon of commercial destruction." The air was gone. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Robert Cartwright seemed to physically shrink into his suit. "The petition is dismissed," Judge Horace announced. "With prejudice. Furthermore, given the severity of the allegations of fraud, I am referring this matter to the state's attorney's office for investigation into possible criminal charges of forgery, fraud, and malicious prosecution." The gavel cracked. The sound was tiny, final. The stunned silence shattered into a low hum. Caldwell was whispering frantically to Vanessa, who had gone sheet white. My father was gripping the table, his knuckles bone-white. My mother stared straight ahead, her performance utterly broken, replaced by genuine, terrified shock. As Mira and I gathered our things, my mother stumbled toward me, her composure ash. "Lillian, please, we were afraid for you. It got out of hand. You have to tell them it was a mistake." I looked at her, really looked, seeing for the first time not a mother, but a co-conspirator in a plot that had failed. "There's no mistake in a forged signature, Eleanor," I said, my voice eerily calm. "There's only intent." My father said my name, Lillian, a command and a plea rolled into one. I didn't turn. I walked out of the courtroom with Daniel waiting in the hall, and into a life that was, for the first time, entirely, unquestionably, my own. The aftermath was a quiet unraveling. I heard, through distant channels, that the state bar opened an inquiry into my father for his potential role in advising the scheme. Vanessa's consulting business evaporated as the scandal rippled through our insular social circuit. The criminal investigation moved slowly, but its mere existence was a permanent stain. They didn't lose everything, but they lost the only thing that ever truly mattered to them, their impeccable reputation. I didn't celebrate. I rebuilt. Aegis didn't just survive, its reputation for resilience attracted bigger clients. The team that stood by me received promotions and bonuses. Daniel and I bought a house, one chosen for light and love, not for address. I learned the hardest, most liberating lesson: family isn't a title bestowed by blood. It's a title earned by loyalty. It's the people who stand in your trench, not the ones who send the bill for the shovel. Some people only love you as a reflection of themselves, a character in their story. When you write your own, they call you a traitor. My betrayal wasn't loud. It was the quiet scrape of a pen forging my name. But my victory? That was the profound, echoing silence of their empty arguments and the deafening sound of my own freedom, finally breathing easy. If you've ever had to choose between your family and your fate, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Share your story. You're not alone. And if you want more real stories of secrets, survival, and silent wars, make sure to subscribe. ****.